One sunny morning, silver slimes, incredibly rare monsters, appeared in the clearing. Two guys were watching them from behind the trees. One said to the other, "Shh, it'll be okay if you just let them go." But he disobeyed him and rushed into the clearing. The young man shouted, trying to stop his comrade, but he wasn't listening. He was rapidly approaching the slimes. The next moment there was a critical hit that tore the core in half. The guy swung his sword left and right, chopping up silver slimes. In a matter of seconds, the clearing became empty of monsters. The stranger's eyes glowed with a bright green fire. Player Takahashi Yukito received the following S-rank items: silver slime armor, gloves, and boots. The hero had an audience. A young man in a green hoodie said, "Got him, and everyone else from the critical hit, and the loot seems to be very rare." The young man thought his acquaintance was a real lucky man. The guy himself couldn't believe that he had managed to obtain 3 items of S-level equipment. Heroes thought it was too good to be true. It was like a reward for all the obstacles he had overcome in his past life. His fate in his previous life. Bronze-ranked adventurer Takahashi Yukito. He was on the first floor of the Tokyo dungeon. Suddenly, one of the men present showed the display of his smartphone. The monsters had gotten here as well. "Now it's very dangerous for people to be outside." One of the guys exclaimed that it was better to go deeper into the dungeon. But some of them thought that the monsters from above would catch up with them. The young man turned to the old man, advising him to flee as well. For now was not the time to hunt slimes. The boy put his hand on his grandfather's shoulder, but he brushed it away. The old man stubbornly walked forward straight toward the slimes, ignoring the young man's warnings. Other people weren't going to stop him, for they thought Grandpa was crazy. Some young man pushed the old man and he lost his balance. The elderly man was on the ground, his hood off his head. The decades flew by quickly. Things have changed since the adventurers came out. Individual types of development have emerged in the familiar characterization system. The level only goes up when you defeat another monster. When the growth level changes, so do the characteristics. The young man dreamed of raising his strength by at least 5 more units. Sometimes adventurers are even given magic or skills. This is common. The old man rose to his feet and activated the scoreboard with his accomplishments. Takahashi Yukito has reached level 98. His strength, speed, and stamina reached 5. Agility reached 4. Magic power reached 3. And resistance to elements reached 2. The man has lived a lot and seen different things along the way. He tried his best to reach a high level. The young man was giving weak monsters. It helped to get to level 98. No one could beat Takahashi Yukito. He's the only one who could reach such heights in his lifetime. That day, despite his age, the old man overcame a lot of slimes. The blows were so strong that even the sword broke into 2 pieces. The maximum level is 99. The last one left, his efforts will fully pay off once he reaches the top. Just a little longer and the dream will finally come true. The old man lunged at the silver slimes with renewed vigor to gain the missing points. The hero rushed at the monsters with renewed vigor. He had to reach his goal as quickly as possible. Surely the growth of characteristics was just delayed. The man quickly got to a huge slime. It was translucent with a large core in the middle. As the weapon broke, the old man tore the monster apart with his teeth. It was at this point that the hero finally received a message from the system. "Takahashi Yukito, you have reached the maximum level. Congratulations." The man couldn't believe his own eyes. What he had been waiting for so long had finally happened. Finally, he was rewarded for his so much hard work. His strength had finally increased by 1 unit. Takahashi's achievement board has been updated. His level is now 99. His strength has reached a value of 6. I can't believe they're kidding me. The man helplessly fell to the ground. Had it all been in vain? Yukito was crushed, so he won't get anything. Hope had left the hero's heart. He had no strength even to get to his feet. Monsters from the darkness were rapidly approaching the clearing. Has he lived his life for nothing? Everyone looked down at him, laughing behind his back. Takahashi didn't even get to save his own loving mommy. The old man's whole life flashed before his eyes. It seems to be coming to an end. Tears flowed from the hero's eyes. He was sorry that the goal had not been reached. Takahashi Yukito no longer has the strength to resist. Another moment, and his life in this reality will end. The old body will be crushed by the demon's giant paw. The level ended with the death of a participant. There was an error in Takahashi Yukito's characterization system. The system has applied a life restoration and rollback function. The player's heart started beating again. Reveal hidden parameters, accrued bonus characteristics as compensation. Unique characteristic points plus 9,999. He opened his eyes, but his vision was still not focusing well. Suddenly, the young man heard that he was being greeted. The next moment, he saw a smiling girl who said that Mr. Takahashi Yukito Takahashi had become an adventurer. The green-eyed hero was stunned by what he heard. Was all this really happening to him? He looked around. The girl asked, "Is something wrong?" Takahashi pulled himself together and thanked him for the pendant. A little later, when the young man was alone with his thoughts, he wondered what the hell was going on here. The hero stared at the screen of his smartphone, sweat beading on his face. The boy thought, if I'm not mistaken, this is the day I registered with the Adventurers Guild. Takahashi Yukito didn't understand what had happened. He was able to remember that right before he died, he had seen something about bonus characteristics. He opens the window. Everything is just as it was then. How could it be otherwise? Suddenly, the hero noticed something that interested him. The boy's eyes widened in surprise. What's that all about? There is a new column in the table. Luck. A characteristic of luck that wasn't there before appeared here. Surely this characteristic must have been a hidden parameter in his past life. I find that hard to believe. Takahashi Yukito. I don't understand how this could happen to him. A man with 70 years of failure behind him. The young man remembered how old he had been not so long ago. Everything is great now. Just the right opportunity to test a new characteristic in a slime hunt. Moments later, the hero found himself in a Tokyo dungeon, on the first floor called Imperishable Footprints. Yukito saw his target almost immediately. It was as if Slammy had been waiting for him among the grass on purpose. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, the hero noticed some movement. When he realized what it was, he couldn't believe his own eyes. It was a silver slime, a very rare monster. He had only met him once in his entire past life. The silver slime then immediately ran away as soon as it saw the hunter. These slimes grant an incredible amount of experience points, but they are renowned for their elusiveness. Takahashi Yukito thought, just one step and my sword will get him. He was rapidly approaching his goal when suddenly something flashed in the grass. An arrow stabbed into the ground right at Yukito's foot. The hero heard someone's apology. Takahashi thought to himself, you stupid bastard. The rare silver slime should have run away from such a noise, but it stayed put. The next moment, the fearful monster prepared to attack the hero. It was something unbelievable. Slime snapped out of his seat and approached quickly. The young man prepared to repel the attack. The guy's sword literally ran into a silver slime. The tip of his weapon easily reached the monster's core. It couldn't take the impact and shattered into pieces. This win immediately raised his level in the game. The sword broke with a single blow. These silver monsters are very strong. Now Takahashi Yukito needs to acquire a new weapon. The young man noticed something shining on the grass nearby. He couldn't believe his own eyes. S-rank loot is a cool silver sword. The hero was pleased with such a great start. He had already obtained a large silver slime sword. Feature: increased attack power. 30% chance to miss the target due to silver slime's dodging tendency. Yukito was satisfied. He was going to have a good hunt. The young man looked around and froze in place in amazement. There were 4 silver slimes sitting in the neighboring clearing at the same time. This was truly incredible luck. The hero even wondered if he was dreaming. In the next moment, 4 monsters simultaneously flew straight at the guy. They were very belligerent. There's no other way out. We'll have to fight, given the peculiarities of his new weapon. Takahashi Yukito realized that it wouldn't be possible to destroy everyone at the same time. Punch after punch, he delivered several critical hits. The hero made it through in a matter of minutes. Luck really works. A critical hit and a magnificent armor appeared on the grass. Somehow it all worked out. The young man won them all at once. His hunt continued for about another hour. During this time, Takahashi Yukito met 10 silver slimes. From each defeated monster, the hero dropped a rare loot. There was nothing left but to recognize that luck is not an empty sound. The hero was pleased with such an acquisition of his. This is really something incredible. The adventurer collapsed on the grass, savoring his current accomplishments. Yukito lay on the ground and looked up at the sky. He thought, now that I have this kind of power, I can definitely become an outstanding person. Perhaps he can make his own family happy. The young man's sick mom deserves help. His handsome sister could also use a little farthing. The young man raised his hand to the sky, dreaming of how he could help all of his family. Suddenly, the hero sat up abruptly. He finally realized he once again had a home to return to. It's been 70 long years of loneliness. Now he has a chance to change all that. The young man rose to his feet. He really wants to go home now. His apartment is 203, and the name on the sign is Takahashi. The hero's hands trembled slightly and he reached for the doorknob. He realized it was better to calm down now. Why he was getting so worked up in the first place. The guy exhaled sharply, trying to calm the frantic rhythm of his heart. Takahashi Yukito finally decided to open the door of his house. But before he could do so, the door opened on its own. The hero was looked at by his little sister. She wanted the same color. The girl was very happy about the appearance of her brother. The young man rushed to hug Nozomi, who was a bit confused by this display of affection. The girl laughed and asked why it was Yukito acting like that. Was it really such a hidden camera prank? Nozomi asked her brother to let her go, but he still held her tightly in his arms. The hero thought that this time he wouldn't let anyone hurt his family. Yukito won't let anyone else take his treasure. The hero told his sister everything that had happened to him. Belle was amazed. Could they really help save her mom with this? Yukito replied, sure, it just takes a little effort. The next day, the guy sprang into action. He traded the rare items he had received. With the money he received, the young man decided to get something. Takahashi attended the auction and bid 10 million for one lot. He managed to acquire the highest quality healing potion. The hero's next destination is a hospital. Yukito, along with Nozomi, approached the room where their mom was lying, and they opened the door after hearing permission to do so. As they entered the room, the relatives smiled at their mother. Mom was very happy about her children who came to visit her. She asked how they were doing. Yukito replied that they should be the ones asking about her business. Nozomi opened the box she had brought and showed her mom the delicious goodies. The woman said, "You shouldn't have spent so much on me. You should have eaten with that money yourself." The young man told his mother that she no longer had to worry about money, and the girl added that they had another gift. The patient's face became surprised, and she inquired which one it was. Yukito replied, "He knows it sounds weird, but Mom needs to drink this." He held out a bottle of elixir to the woman. Nozomi explained, "Big brother made money in the dungeon and bought you this." The woman was surprised, for Yukito had just become an adventurer. How did he manage to earn so much money? The hero replied that he was just lucky. The dungeon was a big lottery. The son again asked his mother for a drink of the elixir and held out the bottle to her. The woman carefully uncorked the cork. She didn't argue and obediently poured the elixir into her mouth. The next moment the real magic happened. The woman's body began to glow. Brother and sister kept their eyes on Mom. They were eagerly awaiting the result. The patient felt incredibly relieved, as if a heavy weight had fallen from her shoulders. It was much easier to breathe. The hero smiled in relief, for this was great news. Nozomi exclaimed, "Good job, brother!" The next moment the woman said that the potion tasted nasty. Her son handed her a dessert that would help her get rid of the disgusting aftertaste of the medicine. When my mom was next seen by the doctor, he said the symptoms had subsided and the disease had stopped progressing. She needed to go to a short rehab. Afterward, the woman was finally released home and recovered. They can live the three of them under one roof again. It's like a happy dream. For the first time in a long time, the woman was finally able to eat dinner at home. After lunch, she began washing her own dishes and told the children, "Nothing soothes like home walls." Nozomi was very happy that her mom was feeling better, but Yukito didn't think it was enough. The girl looked at her brother in surprise. She was waiting for an explanation. The hero replied that this potion is only a temporary measure. It has no power to cure the disease completely. This news upset the beauty. She asked what they should do then. Yukito explained, "You need a much more possible thing, like an actual magic elixir." His sister wondered if he was referring to something advertised on TV, an item found by the world's best adventurer. It can be found 50 surfaces deep and can't be bought for any money. The sister added that this item is truly unique. Yukito agreed that was right. That was exactly what he was aiming for. A unique item is a special item that can only be disposed of by the person who found it. A reward that can be obtained without defeating a possible creature. Nozomi asked, "If we can't buy, then we'll just have to find it ourselves." The sister wanted to know if the brother could go down to that depth. The young man replied that in theory it could not be done, for he would die a terrible death on the way. The girl decided that in that case they couldn't get this miracle elixir. The hero smiled and decided to clarify, "I said it was only in theory." Yukito thought that not only had he gotten lucky, but he had also retained knowledge from his past life. The young man remembered that this elixir could also be found on high surfaces. He had heard of one exception. The boss of the 20th floor is an ancient golem. The uniquely ferocious of it turns out to be the elixir they need. But the chance of this boss appearing is categorically small. They need a rare item from a rare boss is a matter of chance. The hero thought, "In my previous life, I've only heard of obtaining an elixir from this golem once." Now the young man was sure that with his current disposition, everything would be fine. He would definitely find the elixir and save his mother. The sister noticed the suspicious look on her brother's face. Yukito asked, "Is he really that suspicious?" The girl winked. She thought her brother could do anything. The young man was greatly encouraged by his sister's words. It's nice when your family believes in you. But still, before going into the dungeon, the hero needs to prepare. Nozomi was stunned by this revelation. What exactly is meant by the word prepare? The hero was sure that everywhere and always a way could be found. Yukito walked over to the dresser where their family photo was framed. He needed to gather things to go deeper into the dungeon. It was worth starting with the gear. A large silver slime sword. Feature: increased attack power. There is a 30% chance to miss the target due to silver slime's tendency to dodge. Silver slime tear, with a 33% chance, can reduce the damage taken. While the young man was packing, his sister watched him closely. She inquired of Yukito, "Are you getting ready to hit the road already?" The hero answered in the affirmative. "Are you really going to go like that? Usually warriors wear heavy armor for a dungeon trek." The young man agreed, but explained that he was not strong enough to carry such a thing. The window of characteristics reveals a person's potential. The boy realized he could only hope for luck. With those stats, he won't be able to pull a full outfit, so he'll just have to bring his sword. Yukito thought that there were many skills due to the level elevation. For example, Mighty Layered Lunge was a combat skill that had a 30% chance of delivering 3 critical hits in a row. Nozomi asked, "You want to increase your performance? There's a 5th floor." The young man immediately remembered Alice's wreath. You can get liquid loot from the local monsters. Magic fruit. He is Yukito and will help Yukito. The sister asked that one way or another the brother take care of himself. The girl had packed him a snack for the road, though he'd be able to get enough fruit still. The boy thanked Nozomi sincerely for her concern. One package was displayed in the system window. The hero opened the door and left his home. He set out again for adventure. The forest was dark, with ghostly purple mushrooms on the tree trunks of the plants. Predatory plants fed on insects. After walking some more, the hero finally reached the 5th floor. It was called Alice's Wreath. Almost the entire space is filled with plant-type monsters, so it's easy to lose your way here. But the 5th floor was considered low level and had long since been cleared out by other adventurers. Yukito decided that as long as he had the map with him, there shouldn't be any problems. The hero continued his journey through the forest, relying on his temper. He immediately spotted a den of Ents, humanoid trees. The young man knew that the Ents used mimicry to set up their sieges. That's why they look like trees. The guy agreed that their disguise was perfect. A closer look reveals that there are no veins on the leaves. The young man also noticed that the roots were growing in a strange direction. Ents use roots as people legs. They use it to move through the forest. The next moment, the hero saw red eyes on the tree trunk. The guy was pleased with his find. The critical hit worked again. The forest monster was cut in half. Yukito thought it was enough just to anticipate their appearance, and it was a done deal. The next moment, the young man received his prize. A magical fruit appeared on the ground. The hero immediately picked it up and took a bite. He could taste a slight flavor of pear or apple. The guy realized that taste didn't play a role. He needed to check his stats. Yukito realized that his stats had increased. Thanks to the magic fruit, although its effect is minor, even he can become a strong warrior. After that, the hero began a brutal hunt for the Ents. He fought and ate and fought. During this day, the hero was very tired of the taste of fruit. He decided to fortify himself with the food that his sister gave him with him. After lunch, the guy decided to see if he had already reached his pumping limit. Yukito was glad that he had finally reached the intermediate combat level. Finally, the young man decided it was worth wrapping up. Time to head back. It was at this point that the hero felt someone's presence. The boy turned sharply and exclaimed, "Who's here?" The hero heard, "Hey, you can't take all the loot for yourself. This newcomer needs a lesson in good manners." 2 men appeared in the clearing, one gleaming with gold teeth and the other with a ring on his finger. Yukito replied, "I don't see the adventurer credentials. Are you guys the type to profit at the expense of others?" The smaller man replied, "Yes, and there is, a spoiled brat who depends on his equipment." And the other added, "It's not good for you. If you give it to us nicely, we'll let you live." The hero made quick work of these brigands. Yukito thought it was close, but it went like clockwork. The enemy used the Bee Sting Lunge, a level 25 skill. In other words, his enemy was much stronger than him. Bee Sting Lunge guarantees an accurate hit that the opponent cannot avoid. The skill reduces the attack power by 30%. Thanks to clothing that is soaked in tears of silver slime, the hero was able to reduce damage. To make a long story short, only 30% of the force of the blow reached him. If it wasn't for luck, Yukito's stomach would be a huge hole right now. The injured man's partner said fearfully, "Who would have thought Yamada would be knocked out with one punch?" The hero suggested that he surrender. Then he would save his own life. But the man wasn't going to give up. He exclaimed, "Don't underestimate me. A warrior is easily defeated at a distance." Yukito replied that was right. He couldn't reach him from that distance. The robber smiled. Did the adventurer give up so easily? The hero wasn't going to give up. He activated the portal and launched his hand into it. The next moment, he pulled out some kind of artifact from there. He decided to use the inventory as well. It was a staff abundantly covered with a variety of colors. The ugly robber laughed. His artifact looked more warlike. It resembled a magical staff. The newbie doesn't seem to know what it is at all. Yukito swung his inventory. Substance of absurdity. The young man picked up this artifact when he defeated the Baron Ant. The opponent smiled. He thought the young man was an amateur. The substance of ridiculousness is a rare item. This unstable junk activates random spells. The chance of casting something useful is 0. There is a 40% chance of the wielder getting a failure, 30% chance of getting weak enchantments, 20% chance of getting a buff or debuff, and only a 9% chance of creating a mid-level spell. To get into those 30% of receiving weak charms will already be a great luck. In any case, there was no way to cast the desired spell. Right now, Yukito is in the process of the magic lottery. The brigand used Fireball, a medium-level spell. Also, if his opponent hits 9% and summons something of the same level, his hit will still be stronger due to the equipment. Special equipment for mages plus 50. The mage was sure that victory would go to him anyway. The outlaw thought the luck that is inherent in newcomers would not save him. The mage pointed the fireball directly at Yukito. The hero didn't budge. He just stood there staring at the rapidly approaching threat. The young man muttered to himself, "It's finally stirring." The guy closed one eye. He was done too. His magic staff can still do some things. The ridiculousness substance activated. It was something truly powerful. It seemed as if a volcano had erupted somewhere nearby. The young man's face was devoid of emotion. The hero pointed his staff directly at the enemy. The fire was destroying everything in its path. The sight was truly impressive. Just a moment more and there would be nothing left of the forest. The mage couldn't believe that his fire circle had been taken over by an opponent. He grabbed his head. How did this kid reproduce a top-level meteor spell? The chance of such a result was 0.05%. The danger was fast approaching. The fire was even in the sky. The mage was very scared, but he tried to reassure himself. Of course it's just illusion magic, isn't it? Suddenly he felt his hair begin to burn. Everything around him was just hot as hell. The mage begged the newcomer to stop. The robber was incredibly scared. He screamed in terror. The man was so frightened that he gagged his pants. The hero didn't rest until everything around him turned to charcoal. The mage turned into a small, helpless cub. Such incredibly powerful magic broke the artifact that Yukito had picked up from Ant. The young man brought the broken staff closer to his eyes to get a good look at it. In the next instant, the hero discarded the inventory as unnecessary junk. The hero realized that he was too lucky and was happy with this fact. The young man looked around, surveying the battlefield. He himself seemed to be stunned by his victory. Yukito thought, leaving these two here unattended is a bad idea. The hero made the decision to take the robbers outside. He decided they needed to be immobilized first. After tying up both bandits, the guy decided that would be enough. Yukito walked towards the stairs, time to go back. He pulled both robbers behind him. The hero was on his way home. The whole thing resembled a computer game. When they returned from the dungeon, the young man handed both villains over to the police. The interrogations ended when the sun was already over the horizon. Only now did Yukito realize how tired he was. He wouldn't be able to head home yet. He had somewhere to stop. The hero came to the office, at the reception. He apologized that he had not been in touch for a long time, because there were some small difficulties. The girl asked, "Are you Mr. Takahashi Yukito?" She smiled, for the police had had time to report the young man's adventures. The girl congratulated the hero on his victory. As a reward, the hero's rank is upgraded to silver. The young man was stunned. There must have been some mistake. After all, he had done nothing. Reaching the silver rank is not an easy task. Even talented people usually take at least 3 years to achieve it. The adventurer must obtain sought-after items, defeat many monsters. In other words, make a valuable contribution to the guild. But the girl behind the counter replied that there was no mistake. Takahashi Yukito caught 2 guys from the Crimson Hands gang. The Crimson Hands are a large criminal gang. The hero thought, so I've gotten so many points from those scum that I deserve to be promoted to silver rank. The girl said that the young man had worked hard. She added, "These 2 people have strength comparable to that of silver-ranked adventurers." The hero couldn't believe that these 2 were stronger than he thought. He could have been up to his neck in mud if it hadn't been for luck. Yukito took the silver pendant in his hands and said he was just lucky. The girl stagnantly replied, "There you go again. Modesty befits a silver-ranked adventurer. We look forward to your achievements on the lower floors of the dungeon. The available floors are determined by the adventurer's rank. Bronze ranks can go down to the 10th floor. Silver ranks can go down to the 30th floor. Gold adventurers have no restrictions." The guy put a silver chain with a pendant around his neck. He wanted to get to at least the 20th floor. The guild worker replied, "I have faith in you, but you should know that this place is quite difficult to curb." She added that the company does not recommend going there on your own. Such an adventure could be very dangerous. The hero thanked the girl for her concern. He turned and walked toward the exit, and the beautiful woman escorted him with a glance. Yukito thought with a smile, "I grew up much faster than I could have expected. By the way, essentially meeting the brigands was also due to luck." Suddenly, the young man heard someone addressing him. It was an elderly man in a tea suit and a cylinder. He asked, "Could you give me a minute of your time?" The hero stopped. He was ready to listen to his grandfather. "You're the adventurer who defeated those criminals, aren't you?" the stranger inquired. "Yamada Jinbei, thief and murderer, 20 years old, 180 centimeters. Apprehension reward 1 million yen. Hashimoto Hiroshi, thief and murderer, 30 years old, 150 centimeters. Apprehension reward 1 million yen. The hero replied that the 2 men had attacked him. Grandpa's face couldn't be seen because of the cylinder field. The next moment, the older man grabbed Yukito's hand and thanked him. The young man looked dumbfounded. He was trying to figure out what was going on here. Grandpa ripped the portraits of those two scumbags off the board and exclaimed that they had killed his son. The police couldn't get one step closer to him, and you managed to catch them. The man barely held back tears. Yukito said, "No need. I was only doing my duty as an adventurer." The old man bowed. He was very grateful to the young man. Such an act of an elderly man touched the hero. The stranger rejoiced that he could now bring good news to his own son's grave. The guy looked at him and thought, "I don't think I've ever been this grateful in my past life." The young man looked at his own hands. Hearing such words was really nice. By the way, regarding the past life, if nothing is changed, the world will be destroyed. If things go on as they did then, it will happen when he's already old. The young man thought deeply, "Is it possible to do nothing knowing what awaits us?" But the next moment he pulled himself away. "No, don't jump above your head, you slime clown. You're too weak to fight for world peace." The boy grabbed his head, trying to calm his own emotions. First, he needs to save his own mom, and then think about the fate of the world. That's the only thing he should be thinking about right now. Meanwhile, in one dungeon that was only lit thanks to torches, someone was shouting loudly. There was a kerosene lamp on a large stone, and it illuminated daggers of various shapes that lay nearby. The man present in the room was very enraged. He was beating his fists on the makeshift table. He couldn't believe that someone was able to defeat Yamada and Hashimoto. If it becomes the same with other gang members, he won't be able to pay the tax to Gromala. The man grasped one of the daggers. There was a newspaper on the table, where Takahashi Yukito's face looked up at him from a photograph. The bandit plunged the dagger right into the young man's face and promised, "I'll finish you the hell off!" Then he was able to calm his anger and thought he had to be very careful. This young man is not simple if he alone could overcome Yamada and Hashimoto. This Yukito's strength is clearly not lacking, but he has his methods, so that strength is irrelevant. His luck ran out the moment the head of the Crimson Hands took an interest in him. A little time passed and the hero set off again. Quite quickly, he reached the 15th floor of the dungeon. The young man stood on the mountain plain and looked around. It was the peak of the lonely mountain of death. There are many narrow passages. This terrain is very treacherous. Due to geography, this peak is difficult to clear as a group. The hero observed others trying to do so. The young man concluded that it's easy to go unnoticed on the 15th floor. That's why this place is crawling with criminals. The hero's sword slammed into the rock with incredible force. This act of Yukito's caught the attention of others. The guy thought it was the perfect arena for lone hunters like him. Here, he can continue to level up and finish learning all the necessary skills to pass the 20th floor. The hero snatched up his sword, intending to defeat the huge bird. At first, the young man only wanted to rise by silver slimes, but he probably outbid them so much that they stopped sliming. Now Yukito chose a different strategy. He decided to slaughter as many monsters as possible. It's time, we need to get some good work done today. One by one, Takahashi met various monsters along the way and successfully overcame them. He defeated a giant bird, a ravenous armadillo, strange one-eyed creatures, and a giant bear. He received magic items, a bow, sword, and gloves. The hero was unaware that he was being watched all this time. The leader of the Scarlet Hands analyzed his enemy. A loner, a large silver slime sword, no armor. There can be no doubt. This Takahashi Yukito is truly a great warrior. The man couldn't believe his own eyes. This rascal had decided to encroach on his territory. But after cooling down a bit, he decided there was no need to attack right now. Bandit decided to wait until the time was right. All that day, the gang leader hid behind the rocks, watching his victim. Takahashi seems to have decided to take a break. A good idea came into him about how to linger on this floor. The man suddenly realized that he didn't have to interfere at all. The bandit got to his feet and ran away, he realized. This was his territory. Here on the 15th floor of the dungeon, the boss is him. In nature, monsters and animals are divided into ecosystems. The gang leader decided to capitalize on this knowledge. If you reduce the number of predators, you can achieve your own goals. The bandit went to put his plan into action. The bandit decided to increase the amount of loot. He did a good job of bringing his idea to life. Thanks to his intervention, the monsters will begin to multiply at a furious rate. If the pyramid collapses, their reproduction will be difficult to stop. After returning to his dungeon for the night and getting some rest, the leader of the Crimson Hands gang realized it was time. He came up with the idea that Takahashi Yukito would just have an accident. The adventurer will simply perish at the clutches of monsters like so many others before him. Such a demise will not attract the attention of the community. The man was pleased, for everything had come just as he had planned. He had something in his pouch that would repel the monster insects. There was one last step left to put this cunning plan into action. The bandit ordered the predatory insects to attack that idiot Yukito. He wished those freaks would eat the guy without leaving even bones. The gang leader was pleased with his plan. Meanwhile, the unsuspecting Takahashi was destroying the next one on the essay, earning himself points. Finished with the wild boar, the hero listened. He heard some strange sound that was rapidly approaching and growing louder. In an instant, the sky above Yukito turned black. The hero could not understand what this black cloud that hovered above him was. It was a whole swarm of deadly cicadas. These things were very dangerous. Takahashi realized that it was impossible to deal with so many dangerous insects alone. The guy made the decision to flee. The only thought in the young man's mind was, "We need to join someone now. Where do groups of adventurers usually gather?" It was hard to think in such a stressful situation. The hero recalled, "In a past life, I heard there was a supply base somewhere on this floor. Ever since the base was built here, defending the peak of the lonely mountain of death has become much easier. It seems to be located in a cave of red mud." The young man remembered that he hadn't seen a marker for this base on his map of the area. A huge chasm appeared ahead of Yukito, which must be overcome in order to continue the journey. He stopped, but realized that there was no time to lose, for his life was at stake. Using his sword, he was able to descend straight down the sheer cliff. After reaching the ground, the hero pushed off and scrambled up a nearby cliff. It must be here, for the colors of the soil are different. The guy didn't know how to get in. He yelled that there were a lot of monsters around. He needed help. His shouts did nothing to help. The wall looked unchanged. Yukito looked back and saw a black cloud in the sky. The monsters had almost caught up with him. The guy turned his wall to the rock and prepared to defend himself. He hardly counted on help anymore. Suddenly, he decided to try to hack this passage. What the hero saw in the next moment was simply stunned. In the tunnel lay many people, women and men in underwear with their hands and feet bound and their mouths taped shut. Yukito Takahashi couldn't believe his own eyes. What the hell had happened here? The prisoners looked at the guy. You could see in their eyes they were hoping for help. The young man asked, "I hope I didn't just now accidentally discover the existence of some kind of pervert association." None of these men could answer, for they had gags in their mouths. The hero agreed that it didn't look like it. The young man swiftly, like lightning, swept through the crowd of these unfortunates. He smiled, holding his sword in his hand. It was indeed skillful. Seconds counted. Almost imperceptible to the human eye, he prisoners of the human putas. The people were grateful for the rescue, for they had already said goodbye to life. It was his turn to ask questions. Yukito wanted to know what happened here. It was explained to him that they were attacked, and then all present suddenly lost consciousness. The fact that they were not killed could only mean one thing. The adventurers were for sale. The young man thought confusedly, "Have I really found a criminal crawler logo? This point should be a supply point for adventurers." Suddenly the hero realized perhaps this place would become a supply point later. Local law enforcement found the place one day. They were the ones who made this place out of a base for adventurers. Yukito Takahashi realized that he had come here too soon. In the past, he was interested in nothing but his own life. He'd spent the last 10 years of his life getting high off of slime hunting. The sense of time diminishes with age. The next moment, the hero himself stopped the flow of his own thoughts. Now was not the time for such reflections. It's urgent to figure out how to escape the ravenous insects. The prisoners he found are unarmed. This unexpected encounter really surprised and confused him. Now is the time to pull yourself together and take immediate action to save yourself. The hero addressed the audience. "I understand your situation, but they need to pull themselves together and listen to him." Yukito pointed a finger at the sky and explained that right now a cloud of deadly cicadas was flying at them. The terrifying monsters were fast approaching. A little more and people would not be able to escape. There were too many predators on the 15th floor of the dungeon. The prisoners looked out of the cave. They couldn't believe their own eyes. People were shocked. Panic gripped them. The monsters were too many. Yukito said, "As you may have noticed the time, we don't have any. If they want to be saved, let them unite with him." A skeptical expression appeared on the boys' faces. They couldn't hide from so many monsters. One girl said it didn't make sense since they didn't have any weapons. The young man said the Crowlers had all their stuff. The hero smiled and explained that he could give them weapons. He activated the system and began pulling prizes from the table for destroying monsters. Yukito managed to get a fair amount of money. Swords, bows, shields, and various armor appeared in the cave. The former prisoners were stunned by so many different weapons. Takahashi added that he might even transfer ownership to them. People looked dumbfounded, for these weapons were expensive. One of the girls added that it was all very rare. The prisoners wanted to know where he got it all from. The heroine still hadn't introduced herself. People had more questions than answers. None of them had ever seen this guy before. He was a real mystery. The young men rushed to pick out weapons and clothing. They began to fight with each other over these riches. Some felt that defense was more important than weapons. One of the guys said, "If you sold it all, you'd make a real fortune." The girl wondered if they could really take it. Yukito nodded. The hero added that he doesn't ask them for anything in return. The only thing he asked was to be allowed to boss him around a bit. The former prisoners did not argue. After all, he was saving their lives. The men were happy with their new armor and weapons, so they didn't mind fighting under Yukito. The red-haired beauty picked out her bow. She said with a smile, "Hear and obey." All present one by one gave their consent to the hero's command. One stocky young man even agreed to act as a decoy. Takahashi asked them to shut up and listen. Scenes from his past life appeared in the young man's mind. It was that moment when there was not much time left before his death. The young man was truly grateful to be given the opportunity to lead that operation. Some of the guys looked at each other with smiles. They waited to see what their new acquaintance would say. Yukito didn't share their mirth, he was serious. The hero stood at the entrance to the cave. He spread his arms out in different directions. The young man thought they should take advantage of the narrow entrance of this cave. That way they don't have to be with all the monsters at once. Takahashi asked everyone present to try to kill as many insects as possible. He alternately shifted his gaze from face to face. Some looked scared and some looked determined. Yukito believed that together they would be able to defeat this cloud of monsters. The new captain of the small detachment raised his sword upward and commanded his subordinates, "To battle!" When the monsters finally reached the cave, Yukito destroyed them one by one. The hero chose the right strategy. He managed to overcome the monsters in the narrow passage of the cave. The young man swung his sword left and right. The other participants in this battle also doled out monsters. A red-haired beauty was aiming at them with a bow, while a young man of small stature was a skilled mage. Their team successfully resisted the attack of predatory insects. There were so many monsters that the entrance to the cave was completely hidden from view. The monsters were too many, but people continued to fight for their own lives. Many insects had already been destroyed, but more were coming. The former prisoners began to lose hope. There was no end in sight to these creatures. Yukito Takahashi saw that it wasn't working so far. The hero himself didn't realize if he could change the course of this battle. Suddenly, those present all felt the rocks shudder and rocks from the ceiling began to fall on them. The captain told his squad to retreat without breaking formation. People began to run deep into the tunnel. There were more and more monsters, and there was no end in sight. At this rate, these insects would destroy the rock. The people began to panic. They thought they were about to die. Yukito quickly looked around, trying to analyze the situation. The hero thought, "The adit is unfinished, so it's not reliable at all." Suddenly, the young man noticed an explosive on the floor near one of the tunnels. The guy realized it was a chance for salvation. "That's an explosive worth using. The crawlers must have used it to expand the tunnel." Takahashi walked over and picked up the explosives. The young man shouted, addressing the others, "Listen up, everyone. There's a disembowel in the cave. Look for it." One of the guys replied, "Explosives? Sure, it can be used as a weapon, but..." The girls also rushed out to look for dynamite, all seeing it as a chance for salvation. For several hours, they fought desperately against the deadly cicadas. It was very difficult, but it was worth fighting for our own lives. During this time, only a third of the cave remained. The people realized they had nowhere else to retreat. One of the girls has lost almost all her mana. The walls are about to collapse. The hero tried to control the situation, but he also saw signs of destruction. He closed his eyes and finally recognized that there was no other option. Yukito shouted, "Attention!" People looked back at him. The hero asked me to give him all the explosives I found. No one present argued, but they doubted that this explosive would be enough to destroy all the cicadas. It's like trying to grind water in a stupor. The young man caught the dynamite. He was sure he would be fine. He decided to blow up the cave. The rocks would overwhelm these insects. These monsters have low intelligence. They primarily target things that pose a greater threat. Simply put, the monsters will attack the one who destroyed them the most, and that's Yukito. One of the girls screamed that there was a hole in the ceiling. Everything was about to collapse. The squad captain ordered his subordinates to flee. One of the guys shouted to the hero, "Are you just going to stand there? Do you really think you're just going to die with them?" They wanted to know if the savior knew exactly what he was doing. Yukito smiled. He wanted to be trusted. Now he was left alone with a whole cloud of killer insects. The hero understood that sometimes you have to take risks. This is that moment. He decided that now would be a good time to use the X-13 explosives. The demon cicadas. The young man was warned by the system that he had no detonation skills, so there was a 50% chance of an explosion. Due to the hunter's class, the probability of detonation is low, but his luck should help. A new warning came in. Items damaged. 25% chance of detonation. But it worked in the end. The hero flew into the abyss. He had to fend off on the fly those insects that rushed to chase the guy. The young man realized that he had to believe his plan would work. Like a true acrobat, he tried to regain his balance in free fall. All the while, the hero continued to hold his silver sword tightly. Yukito once again took advantage of the dissecting kick that had never failed him so far. One monster survived after that. The monster looked directly into the cicada's eyes. The hero decided that this was the end. He'd had enough. This time he took advantage of a critical hit. With a crushing blow, the young man pushed off, trying to get out of the abyss. Takahashi was pleased with his luck. It still worked. The people watching this fight were stunned. The monster had just absorbed his entire punch. They held their breath, for Yukito might fall now. The hero used his sword again, thrusting it into the sheer rock. But this time this technique didn't work. The sword blade didn't stay in the stone. The next moment, the young man actually flew into the abyss. It seemed impossible to escape. Maybe suddenly someone had dropped a rope from above that lassoed over his arm like a lasso. And at the last moment, Yukito managed to grab on, gratefully accepting help from his new friends. The men stood behind each other and began to pull the rope. The hero quickly made it to solid ground. He smiled. The whole area was littered with rocks and the remains of deadly cicadas that had been destroyed. When the young man finally sat down on the rock, he looked back at the result of his labor. The guy was proud that they had managed to defeat an entire army of insect monsters. Those he saved said, "It's unbelievable that after fighting so many monsters, they have no casualties at all." Takahashi was pleased with the result. The system reported, a large number of deadly cicadas had been destroyed. Yukito was now given the rank of fighter. The damage he dealt to the insect-type monsters was 20%. He has reached level 3. The skill Warrior Intuition has been obtained. The bandit was so enraged at the failure of his scheme that he kicked the table. The man clutched his hand to his head, for that scumbag had destroyed their base. He realized that he would have to answer for it. You could even lose your own life. The bandit grabbed the bottle and shouted, "This trouble happened because of this idiot!" Uncorking the wine, he took a greedy sip straight from the bottle. After drinking almost all of it, the man threw the bottle at the wall and it shattered into splinters. The gang leader promised himself that he would finish off Takahashi Yukito personally. He was so enraged that he was preparing to take revenge, even if it cost him his life. Meanwhile, the hero, having finished with his business on the lower level, came to the company's office. The young man noticed that everyone present, upon seeing him, began to look for something. Yukito noted to himself that he had been recognized more often since then. The woman behind the counter said, "You've demonstrated yourself magnificently again." The hero was now called a mountain crusher, who saved many people. All the guilds were asking Takahashi to join them. But today the hero was not in the mood for a dialogue. He apologized and explained that he was in a big hurry. In fact, the young man ignored all offers because he is not allowed to join the team yet. Guy thought about an elixir for his mom, since it would take more time and effort to create. Under those circumstances, he won't be able to create it anytime soon. Loot in teams is distributed randomly. It is because of the likelihood of getting a rare item is greatly reduced. Thanks to some clever calculations, the hero concluded that the more people in the guild, the lower the winning percentage. But Takahashi decided not to get upset. After all, he had always defended the dungeon solo in his previous life. Why change anything now? Leaving the office, having finished all his business for the day, the hero headed home. There his mom and sister were waiting for him with a delicious dinner. Yukito was pleased, for he had managed to get quite hungry during his adventures. Before tackling dinner, everyone prayed, thanking God for the food. Now Takahashi could enjoy a delicious treat with his family. The taste of the food seemed very familiar to the hero. Perhaps he had tasted something similar in his past life. Despite the fact that their family had never been wealthy, they always celebrated holidays. Nozomi congratulated her brother for already reaching level 20. The mother was very worried about her son. She asked, "Are you sure you can do it?" "They say that after the 20th level, the difficulty of the tasks increases exponentially." My sister would say that she was also worried because only 15% of the hunters were able to pass level 20. A mother admonished her daughter not to use her phone while eating. The hero replied to his family that all was well. "Have you forgotten what I'm capable of?" The woman replied that she was proud of everything her son was doing. On the wall behind her hung newspaper articles with his picture. For a moment, her mother closed her eyes. She was trying to deal with her emotions. When she could speak again, she asked the guy, "Take care of yourself. No parent would want their child to sacrifice themselves for others." The young man couldn't find anything to say to his mother, and a terrible memory arose in his mind. Takahashi remembered burying his dead mommy in a past life. The hero addressed his mom affectionately. No child would want his parents to be upset. The woman wanted to object to someone, but Nozomi stopped her. She said, "Mom, leave him alone. You won't change anything anyway." Belle smiled and added, "Brother, you're too stubborn. Once you get something in your head, you can't change your mind." Tears appeared in the woman's eyes. She remembered her dead husband, because the children were very much like him. Takahashi said, "Stop worrying about me. I'm doing this because I want to." The mother could not find anything to say to this, so she continued eating in silence. The hero looked at his reflection in the glass of water. He thought, "In a past life, I failed to save my mom." It made his heart bleed when he thought of it. To erase the past forever, he needs to start a new life. And for that, he needs to get the magic elixir. After finishing his dinner, the young man folded his hands in a gesture of gratitude. He told his family that everything was delicious. Having rested a little at home, the hero did not hesitate to go to the dungeon again. Going down the stairs, the young man was running through possible scenarios of events in his head. System reported. Tokyo Dungeon, level 20. Stubborn Alchemist. Quest. A large wall that defies the laws of physics. Takahashi Yukito saw danger ahead and bravely ran towards it with sword in hand. The monsters resembled something between robots and skeletons, surrounded by a hostile red aura. The young man remembered that the monsters of this floor were composed of inorganic substances. He moved at lightning speed. It helped to attack both monsters almost simultaneously. Yukito remembered that these monsters are dangerous and cold-blooded killers. Plus, they're not alive. Some of the creatures had wings and attacked the young man from the air. The hero noted that the only thing that saves him is that the monsters act schematically, and he manages to guess their actions in advance. A few swings of the sword destroyed the obstacles in Takahashi Yukito's path. Suddenly, something the young man saw up ahead made him stop. A stocky silhouette of a stone monster appeared out of the darkness. Cyclops had only one fiery eye. The red aura around it gave away the monster's intentions. The young man thought that it would be harder to overcome it. One interesting thought arose in the hero's mind. It's worth memorizing the movements of this monster. Analyzing the monster's actions will help to overcome it. The creature clenched its huge fist, ready to attack the man at any moment. Yukito barely had time to bounce away when the monster's fist hit the ground. The hero had to jump around a lot to keep his life. The physical forces were unequal. It was necessary to act with the help of cunning. The young man decided to use his jumps, looking for the monster's weak spot at this time. Finding the core, he was easily able to overcome the strong but unintelligent creature. After accomplishing this difficult task, Yukito landed on the ground unharmed. The monster fell to the ground behind him. This victory allowed the hero to move closer to his goal. He approached the tall door. Pushing open the door, the young man thought, "The time has finally come. From this day on, I will have a new life." A magical golden glow poured from the gap formed after the door opened. The next moment, Takahashi found himself in a large, spherical-shaped hall. The floor of this room was covered with some obscure symbols. The door closed behind the hero's back. There is no turning back now. In the center of the depicted symbols was a giant stone monster, some parts of its body covered with green moss. The creature's shoulders bore the same symbols as the floor. The hero immediately realized that it was an ancient golem guarding the main treasure of this floor. This monster is a level 20 boss. Only by overcoming it will Yukito finally achieve what he wants. The golem's appearance was frightening. Its strength was incredible and its attacks were powerful. But it was for the sake of fighting this monster that Takahashi reached the 20th floor so quickly. Now it's time to act! Attacking the ancient boss, the hero noted that he had a mediocre movement speed for such a monster. The guy jumped up high and struck the golem's head with his sword. Takahashi had a plan. He needs to chip off at least a piece of the monster's armor. This way he can get to the monster's weak point, which is the core, and defeat the ancient relic guardian. Meanwhile, this battle was being watched by a spectator who wished to remain unnoticed. The gang leader's plan had failed last time. Watching the fight from the doorway, he hoped that today the boy would be unlucky. The magic symbols began to glow more brightly, red light flooding the hall. The next moment, something incredible happened. Another monster began to rise from the center of the pentagram. Yukito's eyes went to his forehead. He never thought that the ancient golem would not be alone. The huge creature got to its feet, taking up all the space around it. Its core was blue-purple in color. The hero looked over his shoulder at the door. A single hunch visited him. The appearance of the second boss means only one thing. There's someone else here besides Takahashi. It was very strange, for the young man felt no foreign presence. The hero thought, it was generally worth expecting such guests, but even a newcomer wouldn't interfere in such a battle. Yukito looked around, hoping to see an intruder. The stranger's attack was sneaky, his dagger flying straight into Takahashi's back. Only thanks to his own keen reactions and fantastic luck, the hero managed to notice the danger. One swing of the hero's sword and the dagger no longer threatens him. A battered weapon, like a boomerang, flies back. Yukito immediately realized that this was all a setup by someone. The bandit leader gritted his teeth. Once again, he had failed to harm that elusive Takahashi. The bandit thought, an ordinary guy can't be such a dabbler of fortune. Besides, this kid has incredible reactions. But the next moment, another dagger gleamed in his hand. The man calmed his own emotions and decided that he had the better advantage anyway. The bandit thought the young man was just an idiot who didn't understand anything. Before the man descended to the 20th floor, he found out that it takes a group of at least 4 people to overcome the ancient golem. He snuck behind the hero to automatically summon a second golem. But unlike Yukito, the bandit doesn't have to worry about fighting these things. They just won't notice him. After all, he has a thief level higher than Takahashi's. The bandit thought, with my disguise skills, I'm perfectly safe. It's worth using a skill called catwalk. The ringleader slipped into the hall unnoticed by the hero, determined to tease the second golem. Thanks to the shadow twin skill, he was almost invisible in space and moved so fast that it could seem as if the person was in 2 places at once. Thus, the bandit decided to take revenge on the hero, because to overcome 2 ancient golems alone an unrealistic task. Just in case, the leader even brought along an invisibility cloak, a rare S-rank item that perfectly hides its wearer's presence from enemies. Now the ringleader was sure that no one present could detect him. 3-on-1 is foul play, but that's what a thief always does to his enemies. Besides, that wasn't the bandit's entire preparation for revenge. He had treated his daggers with poison. It will also attack the hero, greatly reducing his chances of escape. The dagger flew straight into the back of the hero, who didn't expect danger from this side. The bandit thought, it's worth attacking without fanaticism, just to stump the victim. The weapon flew past the hero's face, narrowly missing him. The attempt to harm Takahashi with poison had failed. The leader was dumbfounded. How could a young man hide an antidote under such weak armor? But it didn't take long for the man to get nervous, because he only needed it to keep the hero in suspense. He was now attacking the hero simultaneously with dozens of four-bladed knives. The bandit admitted to himself, "How I love traps of all kinds." The man was confident that he could succeed by working alone. With a sad experience under his belt, he didn't want to rely on a bunch of knuckleheads anymore. The ringleader decided to trust traps that had never failed him before, such as live barbed wire. Thanks to the efforts of the dastardly bastard, the hero was now restricted in his movements. The results of his own labor pleased the bandit greatly, he thought. It's only a matter of time before Yukito gets swatted by the golems. The poor young man had no idea what intrigues were going on around him. The hero continued to confront the two bosses of the 20th floor, trying to break through their armor and get to the nukes, the only weak point in these stone piles. Meanwhile, the bandit decided he had done enough and could now just enjoy the spectacle. But it didn't take him long to rejoice. Suddenly, the leader saw Yukito flying straight at him, thrusting his sword forward. Sweat broke out on the thief's face, pooled on the bridge of his nose. He couldn't believe it was possible. Takahashi smiled and asked, "Have you run out of magic stuff?" The bandit thought dazedly, "How could he see me?" The young man suggested that he should go down. There was no point in sitting there. Without waiting for an answer, the hero threw the bandit's blade at himself and asked, "Do you really like me so much that you decided to stalk me?" The leader was able to escape the danger. He asked Takahashi, "How could you see me?" The boy replied with a smile on his face, "I was helped by my hunting instincts. It's a pretty common skill, didn't you know that?" The enraged bandit shouted, "Stop lying! How can a low-level skill help you find a high-ranking thief?" The hero replied, "Okay, even if it's a lie, what are you going to do? Run away like a scared puppy?" The thief could not tolerate such arrogance from a low-level scoundrel, his face turning red with anger. A vein began to pulse on the bandit's forehead, and he grabbed his swords, ready to lunge at Yukito. The man snapped out of his seat. He shouted that he was better than Takahashi. The hero did not move from his seat. He bravely waited for the enemy to approach. When the two men's weapons finally met, the impact of the metal on metal sent sparks flying in different directions. Yukito stayed where he was, but his opponent was struck as if by an electric shock and thrown to the ground. The hero smiled. He said, "I think that phrase is best left to the winner. What do you think?" Takahashi was able to flick his opponent away from him with one swipe of his sword. The bandit was still only interested in one thing. He exclaimed angrily, "When did you know I was here? How did you find me? Was it just a warrior's intuition? You damned lying bastard." The hero thought he didn't have to explain anything, especially since he wasn't lying. He had activated the warrior intuition skill a long time ago. It helps a lot in battles. This skill recognizes danger in the user's surroundings, but the odds of it activating now are pretty slim. Failure at 99%, success at 0.9%, great success at 0.1%. The hero looked at the system's messages and hoped his luck wouldn't fail him this time. Takahashi smiled. He was sure he would also be lucky this time. The next moment he saw another message. The system congratulated him on his great success. He could see all the dangers in the field. A kind of radar appeared in Yukito's head, informing him of the danger. The bandit was rapidly approaching again. He told the hero that he was too fast for his level. Takahashi thanked his enemy for the compliment and prepared to repel the attack. The battle continued, the bandit still believing in his own victory. He said to the young man, "You are still just a low-ranked warrior after all." The thief thought he was superior to the lad in agility, and there was no surprise in that. Striking again with his sword, he continued to chatter about his talents, adding to them the accuracy of his strikes. Unfortunately, his threats were not idle chatter. The gang leader managed to wound Takahashi. A cut appeared on the hero's arm. Bandit said, "I would like to point out the fact that you have prepared for unusual conditions as well." After saying that, he relaxed and missed the moment his opponent was behind his back. Yukito Takahashi swung his sword. It seemed like just a moment more and he would finally end his pursuer. Unfortunately, the bandit also had a superior set of instincts. At the last moment, he sensed danger. Doing a somersault in the air and miraculously avoiding danger, he exclaimed, "Your situation is still as grave as before." The hero didn't reply anything to this retort. He silently attacked with his sword skill called bee sting. This attempt by the lad only made his opponent laugh. The man exclaimed, "Guaranteed attack, isn't it?" He was having fun because he knew how to respond. The bandit used the butterfly dance skill. This technique confused the young man, for now his opponent could be in many places at once. Striking, Yukito thought, "Did I miss again?" At that moment, the thief was ready to repeat the attack. He pushed himself off the ground and rushed towards Takahashi. The man said, "These are the perfect conditions for evasion." When two conflicting skills collide, he was rapidly approaching the hero as he continued to prattle on about how in the end it all comes down to status. The bandit's attack was successful again. Now Yukito was also wounded in the leg. The hero exclaimed, "Oh my God!" Now he was even more vulnerable to the thief's attacks. The bandit was pleased with the result of his attacks. He exclaimed in a high-pitched voice, "A slow warrior like you will never catch up with me." Suddenly, one of the ancient golems decided to attack the pesky humans with a laser shot. It was only because of his talent that Takahashi managed to dodge a wound that could have been fatal. The bandit continued to gloat. He shouted, "The 20th floor is a great ride." The man stopped a few steps away from Yukito, making strange movements with his swords. He boasted that he could easily dodge the attacks of the 20th floor boss. This was helped by analysis, as the golem moves in a set pattern. The bandit asked the guy, "You bought that information from the guild too, didn't you?" Takahashi answered nothing, silently fending off another blow from his opponent. The opponent's duel was between two ancient golems that would occasionally ride attacking. Suddenly, the hero felt a sharp pain in his leg. Had his luck deserted him today? He lowered his gaze to the ground and saw the sharp blade of the bandit's trap in his own blood. The young man stepped on the spike. The rogue continued to gloat, happy that his traps were working. He stated with a smile, "There are no intruders on the 20th floor. This means that my victory was predicted the moment I started preparing for the operation." After shouting this, the bandit used the scorpion point technique. Takahashi's confidence in his own strength melted away as he barely had time to block his opponent's blows. After another clash, the hero was unable to stay on his feet, the mana of his opponent's sword throwing him backwards. The blow was so strong that the young man fell and lost consciousness. The sword fell out of the hero's hands and fell to the floor of the room. The young man quickly came to his senses and realized he was unarmed in the face of danger. The bandit shouted, "This is the end!" He was sure that victory was within his grasp. The scum's two swords were rapidly approaching the hero. Takahashi looked really scared. But the next moment, the expression on the hero's face changed dramatically. He showed his opponent his tongue and said he was joking. Yukito swung his hand and activated his trap. At this moment, the bandit was in a purple sphere. The man couldn't believe he was trapped in a gravity trap. The young man asked the bandit, "You said there were no irregular troops before, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Are there any?" The thief caught himself thinking he couldn't control his own mouth. Takahashi said, "The information we possess can only be used in a normal situation." After all, no one expected some idiot to get into a battle with the 20th floor boss. The only thing the gravity-trapped thug could squeeze out of himself was, "Really?" At that moment, one of the ancients struck the spot where the bandit was. The hero barely had time to bounce back, all the while he kept talking. "Because of the double raid, even the management changed," the hero told it with a smile. He taunted the outlaw. "You call yourself a thief, but you didn't even notice the traps?" The bandit didn't believe a word the guy said. He screamed that it was simply impossible. He called the young man a low-level scum who should have behaved like a normal warrior. He didn't notice the danger that was very close by. The boss's blow came right on the face of the bandit leader. From such a powerful attack, the gravity trap burst and the thief fell to the ground. Lying on the ground and barely catching his breath, he whispered, "That hurts." The 20th floor boss picked up the injured man with his giant fingers and lifted him high above the ground. And the very next moment, the ancient golem let go of its victim. The bandit crashed to the stone floor of the hall. His bloody hand trembled. He couldn't believe his revenge hadn't come to fruition. Barely breathing, the mangled man whispered, "How could I have overlooked the traps of a low-level warrior?" Yukito Takahashi replied, "Like I said from the beginning, I was helped by my warrior's intuition." The gang leader coughed, leaving bloody footprints on the floor. Rejoicing in his victory, the hero advised the scoundrel to conserve his strength. The young man added, "If you're still alive by the time I defeat the ancient boss, I'll take you to the police." But the bandit was not as weak as he might at first appear. Catching his breath, he tried to rise, leaning on his hands. He said, as if addressing no one in particular, "Do not deceive me." Due to his luck, Takahashi now had incredibly sharp hearing. He was able to hear that whisper. The next moment, the rogue shouted loudly, "In that case, I'll drag you to hell myself!" A moment later, a long ribbon of ammunition appeared on the bandit's body. He exclaimed, "This thing is on a whole other level than your substandard weapon." This turn of events stunned the hero. He confusedly asked his enemy, "Are you completely crazy?" That one really did resemble a man out of his mind right now. He was ready for anything to destroy the guy. Activating the system monitor, he pressed the yes button. After that, there was a massive explosion that blew everything around. The blast wave and the debris it carried on it also reached the place where Yukito was standing. The floor beneath the hero's feet began to crumble, cracks appearing on it. The young man found himself in the very epicenter of the disaster. There was little chance of rescue. In the next instant, the guy flew somewhere down. He was swallowed up by darkness. Some time passed, and Takahashi fell, hitting the stone floor painfully. The young man touched his head and thought it was very painful. As his eyes grew accustomed to the darkness, he tried to see how high he had fallen from. Somewhere high above, the sky was visible. It seemed to the guy that he couldn't get up. He lay there for a while longer and finally sat up. When he looked around, he couldn't believe that there was a secret room hidden here. No sooner had the hero caught his breath after such a fall than he saw a golem flying at him from above. It turned out there was no getting rid of him that easily. Takahashi gathered his strength into a fist and rose to his feet. An unhappy thought flashed through the boy's mind. "I've been stumped." Hoping for the luck that hadn't deserted him lately, the hero quickly looked around the unfamiliar room. Through a hole in the wall, he saw a ladder and some sort of shiny object. "What is that?" the young man thought. He strained his vision and discerned a chest that glowed with a magical light. Takahashi smiled. "Am I really seeing this? It turns out secret rooms and treasures always come with the package." Now the hero wanted to get to this room at all costs. Maybe that's where he came down here for. In the meantime, the second golem, which had appeared not without the bandit's help, had also managed to jump in. The room became too crowded. The young man thought that he didn't have enough space to escape from the bosses. He realized that he couldn't defeat two golems at once just by attacking them. There was a need for cunning here, Yukito thought. I have no choice but to bet my fate on this treasure chest. The hero went a bang. He snapped out of his seat, trying to leap between the legs of the golem that was warding off the treasure. The young man pushed off with his feet and jumped up, trying to cover the distance as quickly as possible. Yukito needs to push himself off the hard surface as quickly as possible, or he will lose his balance and fall. The hero slid onto the golem's shoulder and pushed off of it. A moment more and he would be on the hard surface of the floor. The treasure chest was rapidly approaching. He would soon find out what the boss was hiding here. It was at this moment that the second boss, who was facing the treasure, attacked the hero with laser fire. Takahashi didn't expect such an attack. He was hit in the back, knocking him off course. The young man couldn't hold his sword and it flew to the ground. The hero collapsed to the floor, coughing blood, shaking. Yukito tried to reassure himself. It's okay. My spine isn't broken and that's great. The boy looked up and realized that the danger was still very near. The 20th floor boss decided to finish off his victim. He had already put his foot in to crush the young man. This time Takahashi was scared out of his wits. His luck seemed to have deserted him. He was so wounded that he could not even respond from the danger that was rapidly approaching. The next moment, the hero felt unbearable pain. He heard the crunch of broken bones. Yukito's legs were crushed by the giant foot of the ancient golem. A thin trickle of blood dripped from the boy's mouth onto the stone of the floor. He was almost unconscious from the intense pain. He gathered his will into a fist and slammed his hand to the ground, ordering himself not to give up. The hero noted. The pain was so intense that he began to vomit. The young man saw ahead of him such a long-awaited treasure. His sword lay beside the chest, but he could not rise to his feet. The golem wasn't going to stop. He wanted his victim to be, and kicked his legs again. Everything in the hero's eyes turned red. He shrieked wildly. The hero now recalled, compared to his previous life, in which he had lived for 70 years. Things are different now. This attempt was very short. Takahashi, despite the unbearable pain and unable to move his legs, continued to crawl towards the treasure. He decided this was his last chance to save himself and help his mom. Through incredible willpower, suppressing the unbearable pain, Yukito was able to reach the chest and open it. Suddenly, a powerful beam of light struck from there. Its source was a blue-colored gem. Takahashi found the strength to smile. He had achieved his goal, albeit in this way. The bracelet that adorned the magic stone possessed powerful mana. It was a dangerous moment, for the golem was about to finish off its victim. We had to hurry because there were only seconds left to save ourselves. The hero reached out and grabbed the bracelet. He intuitively knew what he had to do. Putting the artifact on his hand, Yukito muttered, I have it, which means I've won. Fate is still on my side.